Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Works better up here. Yeah, this time I'll try not to yell on it like the other one. I know a woman who was born in upper class, i.e. actual nobility, European culture. She came to California for her gap year and most of never left. Her and her modest but fair trust fund made life in Sonoma County, and she spent her life mostly between well-heeled, educated California liberals and European aristocracy. In no small part because of being fluent in several languages, in her life in Sonoma County, she became well integrated into the Mexican migrant community and ended up making several good friends, and as a result, traveled to rural areas of Oaxaca, Mexico to visit them. Upon returning from one of her trips, she talked about how shocked she was that they were shocked because she pulled all the fat off the chicken they had served her. Animal fat is, after all, bad for you. She honestly did not understand a world where, one, they couldn't readily replace the chicken fat with olive oil, and two, they did not have all the animal or other fats that they actually needed in their diet, much less in abundance. She didn't even understand that you need fat in your diet and that they didn't have enough. To take that valuable fat and throw it in the fire was a jaw-dropping action. She did not recognize that she was wasting. To her, that chicken fat was already waste. I know another guy. One day in conversation, he made the blunt statement that flour is not food. My instant response was something like, let me get this straight. The number one food staple on a global scale does not count as food. But to him, it was not food. Food was cheese and chicken and romaine and Cocoa Puffs. Flour was something you used to coat meat before searing it or thicken a gravy. In his mind, it was much more like paprika or garlic powder. It was something you ate, but it was something you used to cook with. It wasn't food. I was watching a new TV sci-fi pilot a few years ago about a bunch of young military recruits newly arrived at a space station for training. There were, of course, people from other planets, and in one scene, someone orders chili cheese fries. The alien asks them why they are eating something with, I quote, no nutritional value. OMG, what a reflection of the point of view of the probably young writers. Chili-free cheese fries are not just not void of any nutritional value. They are, in fact, highly nutritionally dense food. Lycopene, potassium, calcium, vitamins C and A, protein, several kinds of fat, and a pile of calories and more. But, like with the chicken fat, the writers of the show appeared to have the view that because we overeat and don't need the fat, protein, or calories, that this translates to no nutritional value. No need for it, and no problem throwing it away because it's worthless anyway. In fact, overeating is so common in our culture at a level that is so damaging to people's health that the vast bulk of information we get about food and proper diet virtually doesn't even tell people they need food. And certainly not that they need fats. Heck, with the whole Atkins thing, you now have a significant percentage of the population who actually think eating carbohydrates is bad for you. And it's been this way for longer than half of our population has been around. In biblical times, how to tell if someone was a glutton was easy. They were fat. Oh, I'm not supposed to use that word. Now I could go for plump or heavy or overweight or obese or clinically obese, but I'm still describing the same event. I do think that using the softer words is just a silly game anyway. Ask any woman who is told by the guy she has a crush on that the problem is she's too fluffy. If that hurt any less than fat. But I'll go with fluffy. I guess part of why we don't like the word fat is because it has a perceived judgment around it. Even though my intent here is to talk about the sin of gluttony, and the whole idea of sin is a judgment. There's a major problem here though. In our culture, we're all gluttons. So while I'm wagging my finger at y'all, telling you how gluttonous and wasteful you are, to be honest, it's been a struggle for me to figure out just what my point was in this talk. I'm a big fan of someone standing up on the pulpit, wagging their finger at me, explaining to me how bad I am. Especially when everybody I see in my life is at least as bad as me. I'm better than some. With the other sins that I've talked about so far, pride, envy, wrath, there's some sense that our excessive forays into sin territory is a matter of mostly not noticing. All we need is a little reminder that just because we see a lot of it and no one tells us to stop, that doesn't mean it's not a problem. We tend to not pay attention to the reality that we really are being rude and selfish sometimes. You know, a little wake-up call helps us be a little closer to what we want. And since these sins are mostly affect ourselves and those close to it, any better that we manage to do is to make our own lives better and the lives of people we love. But gluttony, it's so pervasive, it's so much a part of our culture. Consumption and waste of everything we can as fast as we can, that we do not even recognize as a culture that we're doing anything wrong. It isn't just that we're encouraged to throw away the animal fat that may be hanging on the steak we just bought and paid extra too to have it nice and fatty and juicy, that someone spent extra resources to make that way. But we're actively told that we're bad people for not over-consuming. Our very economy depends on consumers. 67% of our economy is consumer spending. And people who decide to save money instead of spending it, who do not decorate for Halloween, Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year's, President's Day, MLK Day, Valentine's Day, St. Patty's Day, Women's Day, Chocolate Day, and every birthday on your block, will be accused of causing a dip in our retail sales, leading to the crash of the stock market, loss of jobs, the government running out of money, the collapse of the justice and police system, the end of government subsidies, and the total destruction of civilization as we know it. Amen. And what's so scary and damaging about this message is that it's true. A drop in retail sales last December of 1% tanked the stock market to the tune of 800 points. 1% in retail sales. It's estimated that half of the food produced in the US is wasted. That is thrown away in inefficient processing or thrown away in the kitchen as people trim off fat, let vegetables boil in the fridge, or throw away leftovers, or thrown away in restaurants. This doesn't even take into account the amount of food lost through overeating, although that's quite a bit less than what we waste. Since food is 5.5% of the total US economy, if we stopped wasting food, that would be a drop of over 2.5%. So what would that do to the stock market? About 7% of our economy is classified as non-essential items. This is stuff we clearly don't need, like TVs, cosmetics, toys, decorations, cards, etc. But this doesn't even take into account purchases of essential stuff that we don't actually need more of. Clothes, blankets, road trips, an extra car, a vacation home, the 235th pair of shoes. There's estimates that up to 50% of total retail purchases in the US are for things we do not actually need. There's a company that will sell you disposable underwear for traveling. What makes it disposable? It's regular, washable, reusable white cotton undies. They're just cheap enough and called disposable so people can toss them and save the library and not feel guilty. It doesn't make sense that a collapse in the banking means that food doesn't get planted, but that is what it means. It's shocking that the domino effect could put half of people out of work, cascading until no one is producing and we don't have the stuff we actually need. But that is the predictable result of a sudden and severe reduction in consumer spending. Anthropologists tell us that we are the same people who roamed Africa 300,000 years ago. They say that if you were to transport an infant from culturally primitive Homo sapiens and raise him with modern humans, the person would fit right in seamlessly. We are the same people that Moses led. We are the same people that Jesus spoke to. The world around us may change, but things in the Bible that speak to the human condition are timeless. It says that gluttony is bad. And we know that it is. Yet we've trapped ourselves into a place where we, as a people and as individuals, are addicted to gluttony. But we don't speak of it. I'm not just talking about never implying that being fat might be bad. Our political leaders don't just not tell us to be frugal and fair. They admonish us to consume more. They trash the middle class for taking COVID stimulus and putting it in savings, paying off debts, or buying durable goods, and lauded the poor for spending it fast on consumables. Our business leaders, they wave every tasty and glittery thing in our face that they can. Even our religious leaders don't speak of it. Listen to radio preachers. I hear them scanning the radio. I do that a lot. I have never, ever heard one preaching against gluttony in any form. Discussions at religious conferences will be packed full of the current political moral fashion, but they never touch on overconsumption or any of the deadly sins, or even the 10 Commandments. Someone being fluffy in biblical times, or almost any time and place, not here and now, was a rarity. It was an attribute that everyone noticed, and an attribute that was synonymous with gluttony. In medieval paintings, the sin of gluttony is depicted with the image of a very fluffy person, usually with a large cup of strong wine and the feast laid before them. There was a time when it was considered sinful to be very fluffy, a time when the opulence of the royal court was frowned upon by the people. Venice had laws restricting how many yards of fabric could be in a single dress, for recognizing that flaunting wealth in a wasteful and damaging way was dangerous. They say that no raindrop ever takes credit for the flood. While that's true, it's also true that there is no raindrop that could remove itself and stop the flood. The flood is building. What do? We're just single little raindrops. No one of us can save the world by consuming less, no matter how much less. Of course, it's also true that no one of us can crash the economy by consuming less. We live in a finite world. No matter what views one might have on proper economic, moral, or political systems, if you think global warming is natural, man-made, or non-existent, if you think God made the world or randomly came into existence, no matter what, simple math still says we cannot continuously grow and consume more resources faster forever. It's finite. We will run out. I'm rooting for after my lifetime. In the meantime, I think this adds up to gluttony being a very personal sin, austerity being a very personal virtue. What I mean by personal is that it really only matters to our own spirit and well-being. It's not like any of us are going to start living life with only what we actually need. I know I don't plan on it. I expect I will keep eating imported avocados and driving to Greeley once a week to sell. My friend from Europe scowls at my 16-mile-a-gallon old Durango while driving her electric powered by a bank of solar panels set up just to feed the car. No doubt she did it right. But though I never say it back to her, I always want to point out that I don't fly to Europe several times a year. The fact is, we all have our trade-offs. It's really hard to judge others because you never really know how austere or gluttonous their life really is. Maybe that cowboy driving the huge truck hasn't bought new clothes in 3 years. Maybe that very fluffy guy you see in McDonald's only commands 350 feet of living space. Maybe that thin woman wearing only natural fabrics is bulimic, has 25 servants, and flies a private jet to work every morning. None of us consumes enough to change the course of the world, even if we become monks. Like I said, the current state of our world and culture makes it, on any practical basis, a personal thing. Consuming a little less in whatever way suits us, just because we decide to. Thank you.
Yeah.
Don't forget, there's refreshments.